All right. Hello, class. Welcome back. This is the last video of the day. Um, this is going to be a continuation of our heaviest of the technical series, video series, back into parametric and performance modeling. Let's just recap. Again, we have three core pieces of technology. We are focusing on this particular set, thinking about our generators and our evaluators. And without further ado, let's let's refresh ourselves here that we are reliant on Rhino for its core geometry. We are doing what we want to do through Grasshopper, and we're extending Grasshopper's capability with some landscape modeling routines in Landkit Pro, Plant Library, and other plugins as needed. And you'll notice that there may be a lot, and that's okay because in the end, we're building specific tools to help you do what you want to do. But for this video, we're going to focus exclusively on we're going to focus first primarily on Landkit, and we're going to look at even more specifically inside of Topo-Kit. So yes, that's exactly what this video is going to be about, Landkit overview and an initial dive into Topo-Kit. As a refresher, Landkit Pro comes with 4 kits, which graphically comprise its cruciform logo: Topo-Kit, Water Kit, Plant Kit, and Paving Kit. As you can probably tell by each of their names, what they will effectively do. Topo-Kit will build, modify, shade, analyze, and document topography using mesh geometry. Water Kit, mostly analysis, and I would say it's mostly kind of graphical analysis. There are a couple of metric-based analysis which will be useful to us, but it's primarily graphical, and it's doing it also on top of a mesh. Plant Kit, as the name might indicate, has everything to do with plants. That will be showing up in experiment number 2. But this is really about managing, referencing, allocating, analyzing, and documenting plants that will go atop a topography, and it's reliant on mesh. And Paving Kit, this can go on top of any topography. Oh, misspell there, but it can go on a couple of different types, although it seems to behave best when it's on top of mesh. Regardless, I've kind of ranked these in the order that I think will be probably most useful to all of you. So Topo-Kit, we're going to start here. It's kind of the foundational layer. And then we'll go into WaterKit for some analysis of Topo-Kit in the next video. And then Plant Kit is going to follow right behind. It's almost tied for second place in terms of usefulness. Paving Kit is interesting for making patterns, and we can talk about ways that you might be able to hijack that to influence plantings or topography. On its own, it's great, but it may be a little less useful directly, although I'm happy to see people experiment with this. So for those of you that don't have Landkit, we will require you to have Landkit to do experiment X, as we're probably going to focus on, well, we are going to focus on surface-based manipulations and surface-based measurements. So you'll need it for this week number 3, September 25th to the 28th. You can download it from Food for Rhino in this way, or as Rob has mentioned a few times, Package Manager is really a quick and easy way of doing it. You can type in land_kit and you'll be able to download it from there. When you download it, if you're using display with icons for your extended libraries, or add-ons, you'll notice that in Paving Kit, the purple one, it has, along with its typical set of routines and specific components, there's an info and there's the land kit license. And as soon as you pull this down onto your canvas, it'll ask you for your pro key. And for those that don't have this installed, your pro key is the same for the entire class. It is this code right here. So please make note of it or refer to Rob's email if you need to put it in. Once you do, you will be able to access Pro Tools. Now you can tell what Pro Tools are because they have the little red box on the upper right of their graphic icon. So even if you try to pull these down, I think it may force you to put in your license. So be mindful of that. Now we'll take a look at how this looks like in Grasshopper in just a second. But what I wanted to call out here is basically that we will be using create, modify as our primary means of creating essentially generators or ways to mold and shape a landform. Analysis will be helpful in evaluating it, but it's not to discredit the other tools that are in there. The shading tool of areas, the areas tool is really great at shading things, and we'll see how you could potentially use that for generative AI image making. And then drawing is really just a graphical output or model-based output. So it will also be very, very handy and useful. I wanted to remind everybody that inside of our Miro board, there is this LandKit campus and resource guide. For those of you that don't have access to Campus Plus because of the Campus Plus registration or membership challenge, everything that has been pulled here provides you the same access to the same content. It's just organized in a slightly different way. I've done it where I've looked at LandKit generally, then I've scrubbed all of their website for Topo-Kit stuff, then WaterKit, then PlantKit, and I've effectively skipped Paving Kit because I would like to kind of just see what people come up with on their own there. I really don't want to bias that kit because I think it has some potential, and I'd like to see people take some initiative to give it a try. But for this week, my strong recommendation is watch the intro to LandKit. I ranked it a 5 out of 5. It also comes with a PDF guide if you want to. There are a few associated files. It's a little long, like 1.5 hours, but it can go pretty quickly if you put it on 1.5 speed. For Topo-Kit specifically, my strong recommendation is to actually start with the Topo-Kit basics video, which I ranked a 5 out of 5. It's short, 25 minutes. There's some references. There's no files with it though. And how to modify Topo, even shorter. I think it's like 5 or maybe 10 minutes. It's pretty quick, but it reinforces some things. The Topo-Kit deep dive is long. It's 2.3 hours. I don't know, like, it might have been the way that they organized the video. I thought it was a little challenging to kind of follow this deep dive unless you did the basics and the modifying first and you actually got to know the tools a little bit more in advance. So I put a caution on this one because unless you've tried to get used to some of these things, it can seem a little confusing as to like how to really interpret these. And whenever I've given you a little file icon here, it means that we have gone and converted these files, which are predominantly US based and on a much larger site, into something more manageable. The 200 by 200 meter tends to be the biggest that we've done for little experiments. And it's in metric and metric friendly and some added annotation. So while the participant package is there, it can get a little confusing as to how they set up their Grasshopper file. So you might want to take a look at our files instead, which are in the FTP. So I'm pulling here from some of the slides that they shared in the intro workshop for LandKit run last year. They did a little Topo-Kit overview, paving kit overview, and plant kit overview. I would say the most interesting thing that reinforces why we are using parametric models and visual programming in general is mostly to challenge this fundamental, I guess, challenge that the author of the tools, Chris Landau, who makes LandKit with a team, observed in his practice and in the industry in the US primarily, is that we tend to draw things by hand for landscape architecture and then just try to redraw it on a digital like CAD tool. It could be AutoCAD, it could be SketchUp, it could be Rhino, it could be any of these, but we tend to do this a lot. And the problem with doing that is that if you want to revise your idea, you would have to draw it and then try to make a couple iterations if you can. Maybe you get to a version number 2 and you try a couple sub variations. But in industry, usually he was telling me that, like, hey, usually we don't get to like iterate beyond, let's say, 3 to 4 versions of a project. And that was a little sad to hear that the part that's the most creative, coming up with ideas and trying different shapes and forms and plantings and designs, is often curtailed because people are out of time and out of money. And so the philosophy behind LandKit is actually to do everything in 3D. It is feeding 3D with some parameters and some geometry, and then getting out visualization, analysis, documentation, evaluation, and adjustments, which can feed back into 3D design. So the idea is that you're doing everything in 3D and then being able to spit everything else out that you need after the fact. And in this process, he likens it to changing the way that you think from analog drawing to computational design, where you set up like a concept and then you try to translate that concept into computational design or parametric modeling in order to have flexibility and explore ranges and subvariants of ideas. And where he starts the series is on Topo-Kit. And he basically says, typically the way landscape architects tend to work is, especially when it comes to making topography or sculpting the earth, is to start with contours. You draw contours that represent different height values, and then you have to move that over and build a 3D model from there. And this process is quite lengthy, and if you want to change something, it can be kind of a pain. And quite honestly, especially after having a couple of chats with Chris, it's basically unnecessary because this process is not needed anymore in today's time, because we effectively did this in order to communicate how we wanted to shape the earth to other people on 2D, like construction workers. Now that we have 3D sculpting and modeling tools, we can just work from 3D and go back. So grading and 3D topography without Topo-Kit is printing existing contours, changing things. He's taking it quite far here with like erasers and calculators, and scanning the proposal, hard lining it with polylines and curves, trimming them, rejoining them, elevating them to their different heights, dividing them into their points, tinning, delining, or lofting those contours, and then trimming things. What the proposal is with Topo-Kit is to actually you could elevate existing contours or just bring in a topography, whether it's in a surface as a mesh or surface as a NURBS. Draw your limits or your boundaries, draw some break lines, and then add features. I want to add walls, I want to add curbs, stairs, paths. I can grade, sculpt, or smooth. And then you can get contours at the end and slope analysis at the end, not at the beginning. So again, just reinforcing this process of bringing in simple geometry, not even contours, just simple things, then getting a mesh, contours, and features after the fact, and leaving room for adjustment. So how does it generally work in Topo-Kit? Topo-Kit has a fairly particular way of organizing data as it relates to this diagram. What usually happens is that it asks for you to create a geoset. We're gonna maybe shortcut this part because you can follow this if you want afterwards, but this part for me it felt a little unnecessary. What felt useful was to be able to create topo and append topo with some features, either features from Topo-Kit itself or other. And then out of that, you can what's called draw topo to get a mesh, and then you can do analysis or get out some contours for representation. In the professional or pro version of Topo-Kit, you're basically doing the same thing. You are creating a topography from the beginning, and then you can add or modify the topo with other pieces. And you can do some advanced analysis like cut and fill. But the general premise is the same of I create a topo, I can modify or add things to it, sculpting it, grading towards it, or I can just, after I'm done, I can then draw it as a mesh and do my analysis. Some of the really great features inside of Topo-Kit Pro are these what's called mods, these modifiers. Modifiers are pretty neat. So up here, this diagram, well, both diagrams are showing you a cartoon cross-section of here's my original topography being flat. And what I want to do is I want to grade up to a particular point. It could be a point, it could be a line, it could be a shape, it could be a curve, it could be another mesh, it could be a NURBS, it could be a lot of different shapes. It's very flexible. And then you decide an offset and a slope. And it will push or grade your topography up to that level that you drew at and create the sloping and the feature afterwards. Sculpting is, I think, a little different. Sculpting, as opposed to grade, says you can put the geometry wherever you want. It's actually preferred to put it at the bottom. So again, here's this cartoon section at the bottom here. The original is just flat. And then you put a feature down like a point, a curve, a line, a shape, a surface, a mesh, whatever. It works really well with just points and lines. And then it will sculpt up or down from this point, also doing an offset, but doing a spread here. So not sticking with slope. Slightly different. Grade goes up to a point in 3D space, and sculpt draws from below. We'll see this in real action here. So the way that it can work when you're doing things in Topo-Kit is to include some hardline features. This is just a little diagram here showing a hypothetical boundary. some curves or hard lines that you want to abide by, some circle features, paths, whatever. And then including an original topography mesh if you need, and then trimming certain results against each other to create a final result. So I'm going to, this is just some more ways of approaching how to do things in Topo-Kit. The last thing that is, I think, super neat is you can do a technique where you can color your mesh, so graphically color it, using a technique called collage. And collage tool basically says put some features down under or over your mesh, and it will push them all like a collage, literally layering one on top of the other, and it will color the mesh underneath it, which could be quite useful for using generative AI for image making. So the way that this process works in their kind of master diagram is to 2D some collage areas, put it back into your 3D overall model, get new 3D areas, and make any adjustments. So let's give this a shot ourselves. The file that I'm using is called Surface Generator Landkit Topo-Kit. It can be found inside of our FTP under Technical, Parametric Performance Modeling, Surface, and then Surface Generator 06, Landkit, Topo-Kit, Surface Generator. So those files are right in there, the base Rhino file and the associated Grasshopper file. When you open the files, what you will notice, I think, is that you may have this initial surface down. If not, no fret. It's basically just inside of this container already, this surface file. So this was just a simple surface. Note, I sometimes use simple surfaces just to create like a proxy surface to start with. I could use a mesh. I could use topography from our site. You can use those. They will work exactly the same. I'm just doing this for simplicity purposes, but we can talk about how to do it on your site itself. So I've referenced this file in. I'm going to just hide that, just show you that there it is. It's referenced in. And I immediately turn it into a mesh that I change its U and V values. I like creating very clean UV grids. I could make a mesh other ways. I was showing a few of you at your desk that I can always turn things into a controlled mesh. I could use mesh from BREP, more or less the same thing. It just gives me the option for settings. Oops. And I like to change those settings with custom here, where I can change the minimum count of divisions in order to make this. But here I made a mesh from a surface and I can change the UV value. So here's just an update as to how that works. Oh, it's a little slow because it's calculating a lot here. Let me not do that right away. 1 second, just gonna pause my video. Okay, and we're back. So I'm just gonna disconnect this for now. And just show you, oh, got a weird highlighter here. 1 second. I didn't want that to happen. Spotlight, yeah, I don't want spotlight. Here. So here I'm just changing my given mesh and I just have the ability to make it more coarse or more refined. And I will leave it, maybe for simplicity's sake, maybe I'll actually put it at instead of 100, excuse me, I'll just make it 70 to start with. So 70 by 70. And I will plug this in to a component here. So that's just to tell you what's going on in the background when you open the file. What you're seeing here is just our usual way of saying, hey, there's bifocals on to see what components are, turn on your profiler, and you will need LandKit, Topo-Kit. There's a YouTube reference here for Topo-Kit deep dive if you would like. And it gives you a reminder about your LandKit license. And sometimes the LandKit folks use Elefront plugin. Totally optional, not needed yet. Now, the way that the file is broken up is that I've organized it into colored headings, starting with the number 1. So getting started with geosets. I then give you, as per usual, notes that annotate what's going on. I then walk through section 1 of getting started with geosets by saying, start with 1A, then go to 1B, then 1C, then 1D. Same thing with 2, making a design with modifications or features. Again, I just give you notes. What do mods do? What are mods versus features? And I walk you through very simple examples. Modifying a topography with geometry, modifying a topography with geometry using the grade feature. So again, the grade feature does this. I'm grading up to a certain feature. And then I also have, let's grade up to a Topo-Kit feature. So this is just using simple geometry, but I can also use their tools like making stairs or making walls, and I can grade to those features. And then I also sculpt. I use the sculpt function just to show you what each of these are like. So again, sculpt versus grade. So the end is that I have a piece of topography that is modified using these modifiers. And then I go to collaging something. You'll see what that looks like. And then once I'm done collaging, I then do some analysis. So I'm kind of walking you through everything inside of Topo-Kit at a thin slice level of each of them. So let's walk through this in a more precise way. I recommend using the tool called, I'm just going to move my personal camera here to the left so you can see components more clearly. When I open up Topo-Kit, I have create, and I can create features like curbs, geoset, paths, variable slope, stairs, topo, walls. I have my modifiers like grading, sculpting, smoothing, adding wall tops, etc. I have my areas to collage things. I can analyze things, and then I can draw things. So how I like to get started is to actually start by going to add to geoset, which actually is in the modify ribbon tab. So you'll see here this component called add to geoset. Add to geoset is a shortcut. It basically says, give me a bunch of stuff and I will make you a GT, a geoset. This is a little faster and, in my opinion, more clear than starting with create geoset, which asks you for layers and a refresh in order to create something. I find it not as intuitive to start here. because when I want to create my topography, I need to give it a geoset and features. So let's just say ignore the fact that I even introduced those. Just start with add to geoset. And geoset says you give me some features like contour curves or spots or break lines or other geometry, mend lines and boundaries, and I'll make you a geoset. So that's how I like to start. Now, where I like to start in this example, I will go through another example. So if that was my first step, 1A, my second set is I want to give my other geometry my mesh. And I'm going to disconnect a lot of these for now, just to start. So I'm going to give this mesh to other geo. And again, I can always modify this to go smaller or bigger if need be. I'll leave it at 58 right now. And my third step, 1C, is create topo. Create topo just interprets your geoset, which you can think of it as a data collector. It's just aggregating a bunch of information, and then it's going to help you make a topography from all those features. Add to geoset or even create geoset really just help you organize data. Think of it as a repository of information. Now, the most interesting thing to do once you've made a topography, you'll notice that create topography gives you a topography instance. And you can't really do much with it. It's a special format of LandKit to basically say, here's topography data, and it's in the background. And I've made the topography digitally, but in order for you to visually see the topography, you need to draw that topography. And so I'm using the draw topo to basically get this out. And it produces a mesh for me. So I'm just going to turn on a custom preview here to show you what that looks like. And I'm going to hide this mesh. So here's this brown looking mesh on my screen. And it's basically just taken from drawing the topography and custom previewing it. Now, on the surface, this looks no different than anything we've done up until this point in class. This is like, we've even added steps here. Like, we know how to make a mesh. We've even done some fundamental principle ways of making a mesh. The reason that we do this is in order to get the T value. The T value is what's really valuable here, because T can be used to start grading and to start grading with features or to start sculpting. So let me turn some of these on step by step. So once I have my topography, yes, I drew it, I redrew it here, no big deal. Let's say I want to start grading my geometry. Remember what grading geometry does. Grading your topography does. Here's my original section. It's a flat view. Maybe there's a person here, and I want to grade up. Maybe I need to make a plateau or a raised platform or a pathway, or I don't know, any kind of feature you might imagine could be useful to your design. But the intent is I want to grade up to or down to a specific feature that I draw. and I draw it at its 3D point in space. So let's see this in action here. What I've done is put down a couple of hexagons. Let me just make sure that I have these turned on here. Here they are. So these, if you want to know, they're under Topo X, and it's under grade 1, as in like the first feature that I'm grading to. When I make a new sample file from scratch, it won't have this. The reason that this data is organized in these folders and subfolders of layers is that's what Topo-Kit does. It automatically starts creating structure, layer structure for you. So I just followed it. So here is a hexagonal feature. Now it's referenced in with the grade topo mod, and grade topo mod says, hey, give me a t value. Tell me if there's any boundaries that I should, contain myself in. Tell me what the geometry is, which are these shapes. Then tell me if there's any features that are coming in, official features from create in Topo-Kit. And then tell me what's the slope and what is the offset. So let's just play with this here. Here is some geometry coming in, and I've turned on this result. So I just want to show you the difference here. Here was my original topography. Actually, I'm just going to bring this right over here. Oh, no, that's even better. Display selected only. Okay. If you're wondering what I'm doing here, display selected only turns on in Grasshopper what you click on. This can be handy sometimes because now I can turn on both of these and you can see the impact. Here's the original. And then here's the sculpt, the grade. Original grade, original grade. So to make this perhaps more obvious, what I will do here is these features, I'm going to make them even bigger or taller. Let's raise this platform up here. You can see now what's happening is that it has pulled the topography up to meet this feature, and it's respecting my slope of 65%. There's that 65%. And it has a 0 offset. Let's try making the offset a little bigger. Notice what the offset is doing. The offset is just making the space around the object have more influence over what's happening around it. So I can raise this here. Maybe I want to push this one down. Maybe I want to push this one down. Maybe I want to change my slope from 65% to 25% or 20%. And now it has much softer levels going from here to here, although it's taking up much more space. So you can see that I'm starting to just play with topography here. So this is what grade does. Now I don't have to use all of these particular these shapes. I could use other shapes, but I'm just going to go back a few steps here. I'm just going to bring it back to something that I set up and that I liked. Okay. So here's my grade 1 level, that is. Offset, I'm taking that back down to 0, and I'm keeping 65%. So here's these hexagonal plateaus. That's what grading does. Now, I can grade with not just shapes that I draw in Rhino or Grasshopper. I can grade with actual features that LandKit provides. I'm just going to turn some of these guys on. And what kind of features can you make inside of Topo-Kit? You can make paths, stairs, and walls if you want, and curves. For demonstration purposes, I wanted to make a stair, and I wanted to make some walls. So stairs are pretty easy. Stairs says, if I pull this down, create stairs, it says, give me a surface and tell me what your rise values are. And it will make steps according to what it needs. So in this case, I gave it this. I'm just going to go back to display preview off here. Here's my surface. I've referenced in, I want to make stairs from this plateau to another plateau. And I want to make them at a riser of 0.5 meters. So pretty tall, but just making it kind of simple here. And it draws stairs. Check it out. Pretty easy. It respects the first one where it needs to be. And then it starts making stairs as you go from your surface to the next surface. Pretty easy stuff. And it gives you these blocky stairs. They're meant to be simple blocky representation. And then all I did was just shade it a separate color here. So here's my stairs as I go from one plateau to another plateau. Now this is here because I have the old topography turned on. So I'm just going to leave on my newest one. Now it looks a lot better. I'm going from this plateau to another plateau with these stairs. And I also asked Topo-Kit to make me some walls. And Topo-Kit walls, if I wanted to make walls, it says, give me some curves, give me some spots that will define thickness and height, and a curve tolerance, and a spot tolerance, and I'll make you some walls. To be perfectly honest, the walls is okay. I was kind of medium about the walls, in all honesty. Let me see here if I can find this. I think actually my curves, let me just see where these are. Oh, here they are. Here are these curves that I kind of drew in here. Let me just see if I can find these. Yeah, so here's some curves. They're under the walls layer. They're drawn in black. Maybe we'll draw them in something more vibrant to see them. And I'll make my custom preview here a little more transparent. It's not respecting transparency. I'm just going to leave the way it is. I'm going to hide. Oh, of course, I'm touching the wrong. There we go. Now you can kind of see I just made my mesh a little more invisible, wireframe, and here are those curves. So I wanted to make some walls around these hexagonal plateaus on this layer. So I can draw on this layer. I'm drawing at 3D level where some of these curves are going to go. And when you give it the right information, which is spots, curve tolerance, and spot tolerance, it makes for you some W's. Same with stairs. It makes stairs an S. And then you can draw these things. I can draw stairs, or I can draw walls. So here's me drawing the walls. Pretty easy stuff. You can pull out the back, top, bottom spots, etc. but I really just want to see these features here. And then what you can do is that you can say, hey, I want to grade to these features, these F values. So stairs as F, sorry, stairs as S, and W for walls are fed into a merge component here and flattened. Again, I want no data structure. I just want them all as one list of features. And I can feed those into F. And for these ones, I wanted to give it a unique slope and offset. So here is the result that is now respecting the stairs and the walls. And you can see, you might be like, like what's really going on here? And I'll show you what's really going on. Is that before these, you can see that the grading does not respect the wall. The wall here is just kind of like, it's kind of floating on its own. It's not really doing anything, and the topography is not reaching up to it. But as soon as I grade against those features, so this was from just the hexagonal plateaus. Remember these guys? This one says, I'm going to take the walls into account. And you can see now that it pushes the topography up to the top of the wall or as close to it as possible. Now, this works medium level. It depends on how fine your mesh is to begin with. So the more you make your U and your V count to start, the more it will be refined. So I'm going to show you this, but I'm not going to use my slider. I'm going to use middle mouse button, and I'm going to lock my calculation. Locking your calculation freezes Grasshopper from changing things in calculating it. You can change your sliders, but it won't automatically update it. So now I want to change this from 58, and you'll notice that all my wires went orange because the value has changed. And downstream, it is different, and it needs to calculate it. So I change it from 58, and I'm going to change it to a value of 100. Now, when I'm done, I can either click on the lock icon or unlock. And it will take a little while because it's calculating everything. But now you'll see that it has made a more refined looking mesh up to those wall features. So you can see here, it's a little smoother, a little more refined, not as choppy, so pretty good. So now I've graded up to some features. I've made features from Topo-Kit called stairs and walls, and I've graded my topography to meet them. And now we're going to try the last one called sculpt. Let me turn these guys on. It'll take a couple seconds to compute. And the geometry here is these kinds of lines. I don't know if you can see these down here at the bottom. They're just two-dimensional lines. They could be anything. They could be dots, they could be lines, curves, other shapes. I made them these kind of interesting looking, I'll just move my camera over here for 1 second. I just made them these kinds of shapes that when I look at it from top view, I'm just going to make this a little more transparent. And make my top view shaded. You can see here that these lines are kind of like, they're kind of branching away from the hexagon points. I don't know if you can see they're starting to connect some of these together. I just highlight these green, so maybe a little easier to see. And I'll turn my mesh preview off. That's actually probably gonna make it a lot easier. So you can see here, I'm drawing these lines that I think I want to sculpt, like carve into the earth relative to these curves. And what sculpt asks is, again, give me T and give me some geometry to sculpt with and tell me how high are they, how much is their spread, and if they have an offset. And basically from there, you get another T and you can make a draw topo, and the result is as follows. Let me turn on my mesh preview and go to perspective view. And you can see it has added in these kind of subtle carves. I'm actually going to make it a little deeper. I'll make these like -2 and just let it calculate. And you can see now these curves are carved much more deeply into the earth. So you can really scratch into the earth if you want here, almost like actually like sculpting. So this is maybe a little harder to see. Let me turn on some shine here. Create material. This is my diffuse, my shine, 100 value. I'm just gonna add some shine here. Or not. What is the deal? Max shine. Oh, it's probably because of my preview. I'll just turn on wireframe. Yeah, here we go. This is a little easier to see. You can kind of see these sculpt a little easier. So just investigating what is the result. And again, I could make this more refined if I wanted to, but this is just to give you a preview of how these tools work. So let me just take this back here to without as much shine value. Now let's just review what happened, because I know a lot seems like it was kind of going on. And you may not need all of these features to be 100% honest. A lot of these are more nuanced and precise. Maybe you want to make stairs, maybe you don't need to make stairs, or walls, or other things if you don't want to. Paths will work in a very similar way. It's worth experimenting, but let's review. I made a topography using Topo-Kit to get a T value. Once I get a T value by making a geoset, I can then make all my mods. I can make my mods, like I can grade against an object. It could be a geometry that I draw, or it could be a feature from Topo-Kit, like path, stairs, walls, or I can sculpt. These are the three basic things you can do: grading against geometry, grading against features, or sculpting. Now, I left here a note in red. Topo-Kit treats each successive mod like a layer, kind of like what would be done in Photoshop. So you would have to, in each of these, you'll notice that it's kind of cascading down. In each of these, I give it a T value. Here's a T, and it gives me out a T value. And for each of these new T values, something has changed. I can draw the topography, or I can modify it again. I can add another layer like in Photoshop. So I'm taking my T value here, and I am adding more things to it. And again, I'm leaving in notes here, like it's super important to flatten your merged features. If you don't, and it will make an instance for each feature, this doubles or triples and will crash your computer. But you can see again, all I've done is started to, I fed things into the grade and got a draw out, fed into the grade, got something out, and sculpting, I'm giving it T, and then I'm drawing topography with the T again. Same stuff, nothing, nothing too complex here. But just note that it has this waterfall effect of going from one layer to another layer to another layer. You guys probably have seen this working with Bison. Bison works in exactly the same way. It's like start modifying something here, then I will take that last calculation into effect, and you can add another one, and then you can add another one. It behaves very, very similarly. This is a well-known and well-tested method, and people have capitalized on it using this technique. So keep this in mind. You're making a geoset to get a topography, to get a T value. Your T value you use to draw, or you use your T value to modify it. And you can use the T to draw or modify. Draw or modify, and then draw at the end here. And this is the final result of this little sample. Now we'll go into more experimental sample in a second, but I wanted to show you what you can do afterwards. So here we are working with areas. Areas is only available in the Pro Kit, where you collage or you create areas. The idea here is to color your mesh if you want to. So let's go ahead and try this. I'll just turn these on. Turn this guy on. And notice here, when I click on this particular parameter and I click off of it, it has a little radio signal here. This is just a way to represent a wire. I can go to wire display default, and it just connects it. I did it here as hidden because I just didn't want to make so many graphical looking spaghetti. So I just hit it here, and it's still pulling this mesh from here to here, but that's all that's going on. Now, to make an area, or rather, like we did before, where you start with a hunch. I'm hunching that I want to make a collage. I go here and I'm like, I want to make a collage. What do I need? I need A plus F. Okay. How do I get A plus F? Well, A is equal to area. If I hover over it, it's like, give me areas or topo features like walls to collage. So I know I need an area. So immediately I'm like, let's get you an area, because I got to find an A that will go into here. And then I work backwards. What do I need? I need geometry, a distance tolerance, an edge tolerance, a layer, and a color. Okay, so what's going on here? What's going on here is if I turn on the layer collage and I go back into my shaded preview, I have a series of objects that are like this diagram here. They are being layered on to affect my final topography. So you can see here I have a base layer of green. It's just a simple shape, a simple surface, NURB surface, doesn't matter though. And then for each of these hexagons, I want to do some dark grass and some paving as like a kind of flat zone. And they're layered up so that green sits on the bottom, dark green on top, and then gray, as in a kind of plateau, is on top of that. Once I have a sketch of what I want to make, I want to pull that sketch in using a geometry parameter. So I'm just, if I turn this preview on, it's all of these features here. And I don't really have to do this clean tree thing. This is just what is recommended by the the land kit team, but I could just go straight into here. So I don't even need this. Oh, actually, I do need that. Let me explain why. Technically, for geometry purposes, I don't. But a reason that it's handy to have this is that I can pull what's coming in from Rhino in this case. I'm drawing these shapes in Rhino, is that I can bring in these objects and retain their layer name and their color information, and then use that layer and color information to affect the collage. So let me show you what this looks like first, and then we'll work backwards. So here, I'm going to change this, turn this preview on, and I'm going to close this up, close up collage layer, close up these features. I don't really need them. Close up the stair surface. And I don't even need the stairs. And I don't need these. So what has happened now is that it has colored my mesh. Wow, I just thought of a funny thing. You guys remember on oh, there's the movie where the guy goes, "My wife." This is reminding me of my mesh. Anyway, my mesh here is colored according to that collage below. So you can see that the mesh is literally colored dark green, gray, and light green to reflect the collage drawings that I've done here. Now I could move this gray. Well, let me do something that's actually going to cause a change. I could move this gray like over here. And now you see it has made my collage gray over there. Now you might be wondering, like, why is this useful? Why do I want this? The reason why this is useful, or why you may want this, is once this is done calculating, it seems that it has an error here. Let me just move this up. Looks like it's got some challenges here. Let me just move it up a little more. There we go. Okay. It was sitting off the edge and it was making an error. So apologies for that. Let me just go to wireframe. Here it is a little easier to see. Why you may want this is if you're inside of your shaded mode or any other mode, you could use this with Varus or Look XAI. And again, it will look at this mesh, and then you can start to add some prompts that will change what you're seeing here. So I'm not going to bother with this right now just because you've seen me do this, but this is why I would want to do it, is that I can color a mesh and I can use the colored mesh to affect my prompt. And that's pretty powerful. But this is all optional. Collaging, you don't need to do this if you don't want to. It's optional. It's just I'm trying to break down what tools are available. Same thing as mod with grade features. Some of you may not want to do stairs or walls or paths. Like, that's totally fine. Maybe you just grade with geometry or you sculpt. Totally fine, up to you. Now, once I have, let's say, a colored mesh, I could skip over this step and I could just start analyzing it. And there are three basic tools that come out of analysis here. There's cut and fill, elevation, and slope. Let's cover the easy ones first. Elevation, pretty easy stuff. Elevation says, give me a mesh, and I will, according to a color tint or tone, I will tint it such that white colors are at the highest and darker colors are at the bottom. And I can even have a legend created which may help to graphically associate heights with the colors. So again, all this is asking for is give me a mesh, give me a color, give me a step for how many steps you want me to break down the legend into. And I will make for you a legend and a shaded mesh. Now I could use this inside of Varus as well, just FYI. This is what makes coloring meshes and using Varus so fun. So I'm gonna here just quickly show you again, I can change this color tone any color I want. Maybe purple is my weapon of choice today, and you get some cool results. Slope, also pretty easy. Just turn this guy off. Slope says, give me a topography, again, color and steps, and I will make for you a mesh that follows slope. And you can see here that dark colors are more slope intensive and white colors are more flat. Now, again, I can change this color if I want to. Swatch, maybe I want to make it a kind of reddish color. And it will, oh, wow, it really changes that a lot. Let me change the steps from 1 to 10. Let me give it 6 steps. Oh, wow, it really does not like taking a new color. Never mind. I thought that their tools would have been a little more flexible. I suppose not. Steps looks like it does something. In any case, my strong recommendation for this one is probably don't touch it. Handy if you want to just analyze slope graphically. The last one is cut and fill. Cut and fill says, give me an original, give me a changed mesh, and tell me if there's a difference in the cell size and the visual depth to work with. And I will give you a resultant mesh, and I will tell you the cut volume and the fill volume. This is pretty handy. Let me turn this on. It's only going to visualize the mesh that is changed. So it's not going to give you everything. Oops. Here you can see that cutting is done in dark and adding is done in orange. And that's just out of the box how it works. But you can see that it's hiding away everything else. It's just showing you what has changed. And it's calculating what has changed. What are you cutting and what are you filling? So you could work with these two values and give it to something like a Galapagos. And you could say, hey, I want to get my cut volume into a number container. And I want to let this be my fitness objective. And I can minimize or maximize this value. Now, because the change is made by me moving things in Rhino, Galapagos would not actually have any control over this. So it would be like, I can maximize it, I have a value, but I can't control the genes. So this is what would happen there. And this is just showing you graphically. If it's going darker, I'm removing 2 meters cubed. And if it's going dark orange, it's basically adding more than 2 meters cubed in that zone. So quick review again. If we step here, I'm creating a topography, I'm adding to my geo set, and then drawing it, and then basically getting out mesh, contours, and cut and fill. We didn't talk about contours, but we probably can. Because I could draw, they don't even give you draw contours out of the box here. Not that it really matters, to be perfectly honest. We could just go to contour, and we could just take any of these meshes and we could contour it. just cut this in 1 meter contours, and this is the result I get. Notice it does get a little jagged because of the fact that it is a mesh, but you know, it's not terrible, and it's fairly lightweight. So that would be how to get contours. And let's see if I missed anything else here. I don't think so. We added and modified. We added to the geoset. We drew it. We got a mesh, contours, and analysis. I think that that kind of covers what can be done inside of LandKit. Now, maybe we're gonna start one from total scratch. I'm even gonna just delete this. I'm just gonna show you how it is to draw from Topo-Kit to start from scratch. So there's a couple ways to do this. Sometimes I like to start with like a base flat surface. This is a completely flat surface. And I'll bring this surface in. Oops. That's my surface. And I'll go into Topo-Kit here where I'm like, let me add to geoset. That's where I want to start. And I need something to work with my GT once I'm done. So I'm going to create topo from GT. And I know I'm going to eventually want to draw my topo from T. These are usually my first 3 steps here. Now, nothing's coming into this GT to make the T. So the mesh is like, I got nothing. I got nothing in there. So what we can do here is we can take in this base surface, feed that into other geo, and you can see it's already starting to now make something. I'm gonna just hide away that surface to reduce noise on the screen. And you can see what it likes to do is make points all along its features and just stitch it together using triangular faces. Now in Draw Topo, you got a couple of options here. You get feed me T and I'll make you a mesh. Let me just make this only the mesh. So it's getting rid of the visual representation of the points here. Great. But it says, give me minimum divisions or maximum divisions, or even angle tolerance. And we can play with this a little bit. We can go 0.1 to maybe 10. I'll put this up to 9 at the beginning. And you can see here that it's making it more coarse. I can bring it down to a very, very fine level if I need to. But, you know, maybe to start, this is okay. This is if I'm bringing in just a surface. I'll show you a couple of different tricks here, what happens. So if I have this, now I have a mesh which is flat. Great, basically useless. But what I can do is I can feed my add to geo set some more things if I wanted to. I could give it some curves. I'm going to set multiple curves, this blue curve here, this blue curve here, and I'll give that to break lines. And now immediately you can see that it has started to grade to this break line here. Break line is basically like a hard line feature. It's like, I got something important here, and you got to respect that. Now I can move these points of the curve around if I need to. I'm literally just sculpting the terrain at this point manually. I could do some really fun things, moving it up, moving some points down. You know, you get the idea. Okay, I can also bring in spot elevations. This came up in class. Can I use things like spot elevations? And you can. I can bring in the points, and I'm going to set multiple points as my spots. So 1, 2, where are the other points? 3, 4, 5, hit enter. They're now referenced in as volatile data, and I can grade with spots. So I can pull this up, pull it down, move it across, do all kinds of interesting things if I really wanted to. And you'll notice that it doesn't get confused as it switches across break lines. Very handy. Just some great math happening under the hood from the Topo-Kit team, the LandKit team here. So I can make a mesh this way, and if you want to make your meshes using a kind of more Delaunay approach, that is also fine. I just want to show you the difference in preparing your surface in advance, making it a mesh instead, versus doing it this way. Just move this over here. I'll get a mesh. I want to make a mesh from a B-rep. Oh, goodness. Mistake. That's my curve. I want to go with my surface here. So here is, let me just hide away all of this. Here's my mesh. I'll just turn on Control M so that we can actually see the mesh. And settings can be used to change this. So I can go to Mesh, Settings, Custom, and I can plug these things in here, and I can change my minimum count of faces. Maybe 1 to 3,000. My minimum count is now 1. There's only 1 mesh face, or more or less. Great. I have some control here. And I'm going to use this as my other geo. So now instead of a surface, I'm giving it a mesh that has been broken down this particular way. And I'm going to hide this away for now and just show you what happens here. Now notice, because the mesh is made in these divisions, all of these points here, these break lines, are treated much more explicitly. It's like, okay, I'm going to pull the mesh up right there. So it's pulling up the nearest vertice, and it's doing it that way. So this is a current limitation of how the geometry type matters a lot. Now, I could take these away. I can disconnect these. And I could use these features later when I use a sculpt or mod. So let's try that. I want to modify by grading. Here is my T value. And I want to maybe just grade to this geometry. And instead of drawing the mesh here, I want to draw the mesh here. Notice what happened. Now it's following these lines here, and it's going against, it's following the slope and the offset. So I can change the slope from 0%, well, 1% to, let's say, 90%. And it will have a different effect. Notice the change. A little more control here, or a little more effective die-off. I maybe want to increase this number, maybe 200. So you're getting different effects as you grade. This is kind of like, how much influence does this geometry have as you go? And then offset. Now offset, I don't want to make it this big. This is going to follow the meters. I'm going to maybe say, I'll just make a new one. 1 meter to 10 meters. And this will control my offset. Notice that it's making these features more flat, almost like a roadway. And the result you can draw. Or I could sculpt. I could say mod sculpt. This is my T. And let me just move this down here. This is my geometry. And I want to change the height, maybe -10 to 10. And I'm going to change the spread from 1 meter to 10 meters. So the height, I'm digging down into the earth. And the spread allows me to have a buffer. So here you're seeing the spread is, the finer it is, the more it's trying to pull on those vertices versus spreading it out. Maybe I want to make this a little bigger. Let me make a new one. Maybe 5 to 25 meters. This feels like I'm really softly carving into the earth. And then I can also make an offset here. So kind of like a roadway. Maybe I want to make it a little more flat, have an effect. So this is how to use these tools again. I could again just show you how areas works for collaging. I want to make a collage. I want to make an area to define the collage. What is the geometry in mind? Let's make it from scratch. Collage, collage, collage. And I'm going to make this my current layer. And I'll make some shapes. I'm going to make a circle, and a circle, and a circle. I'm going to offset this. Well, maybe. Well, for now, I'm just going to make these planar surface. And this one, I'm going to change its color to cyan, like a pool. Maybe this one is yellow. Maybe this one is another pool. Oops. So now I have some geometry. And I can put it above or below. And I'm going to pull in my geometry here. Set multiple geometry. Did my pool, my yellow, my blue. Put this into here. Feed this into so. And I can draw that mesh. He's going to make draw areas. It's a topo mesh. And I'm going to get some projected meshes here. Hide away some things to make it a little more obvious. Ah, right. I need to bring in my draw area from projected meshes. I need to bring in object details. Let me just copy paste. I'm Frankensteining some files on the fly here. This is going to have layer information. Oh, right. This is affecting layer. this is affecting color. And how was it strung up in the previous file? Draw areas. The colors goes into diffuse projected meshes, topo mesh. Yep, I think this is mostly correct. Let's see what happens. Colors here. Wonder why it's not showing oh, it's not showing everything because I did not make a base layer of color. So let me just make a base layer here. On the surface, sure, why not make it gray? Set 1, 2, 3, 4. This color, I want it to be green. One, two, three, 4. That's better. So it may not be super obvious because the colors are gross, but basically what's happening here is this is pulling in these objects, treating them like a collage, and then pulling them up to the surface to color the new area made. Again, you don't really need this. This is just optional. What is most important is how to start sculpting your terrain and your topography. That's a key. How do you want to change your topography? Yes, I want to change this. So now each of these can be used. These are just ways to modify the topography. You will need to create some sort of underlying pattern or logic that is going to govern this. Because right now I can change this inside of Rhino, which is all good, but I want some sort of parametric control. So this is pretty much it for Topo-Kit. We covered the basics of adding to GeoSet. You can either use GeoSet to make topography that way, or you can use the modifiers. Both are completely valid. They're just different tools for you to take advantage of as you see fit. So I'm probably going to stop the share here, and I'll send this video off to you, and you're welcome to start playing and messing around. But the goal is to start making topography, making changes, and just getting used to these tools so that you can try to optimize one thing for the end of next week. Talk to you guys later.